We've all had to wait for something we really, really wanted, right? A week, maybe a month, maybe even a year. But could you imagine waiting for a quarter of a century? That is the incredible story we're jumping into today. A huge promise made to a man named Abraham and the son he was told would one day be his.
So let's just look at this timeline for a second because it really puts things into perspective. At age 75, Abraham gets this amazing promise of a son. Then, a whole decade goes by. At 86, a son, Ishmael, is born, but here's the twist. He's not the promised one. The real fulfillment doesn't actually happen until Abraham is 100 years old. That is a massive 25-year gap between the promise and the payoff. So let's just be real for a moment. Could you do it? Could you hold on to a promise for 25 years when every single day might feel like another piece of evidence that maybe you've been forgotten? That's the tension at the very heart of this story.
Okay, to really get our heads around what's going on here, we have to look at it from two different angles. We're going to start with the divine side of the equation, what the source material calls God's unwavering faithfulness. The text basically breaks this faithfulness down into three core pillars. You've got the promise, which is the what, then there's the provision, that's the how, and finally the plan, which is all about the when. Let's unpack each of these.
First up, the promise. This verse just lays it out plain and simple. After all those decades, after all the human doubt and impatience, the original commitment was kept, word for word. The promise itself never changed, even if the people waiting for it had moments of weakness.
Now for the how, and this is where the story gets pretty wild. This was not a normal birth. Abraham was 100 years old and his wife Sarah was 90. We're talking way, way past childbearing years. In their culture, having no kids was a huge deal, a real crisis. So the birth of their son Isaac is presented as a total miracle, something that just defied all natural biology. And that brings us to our third pillar, the plan or the timing. This phrase in the text is so important. The birth didn't just happen randomly or eventually. According to the story, it happened at the exact set time that had been determined from the start. So the big insight here is this clash between our human clocks and a completely different kind of timing. For Abraham and Sarah, 25 years must have felt like a denial, right? But from the story's point of view, it wasn't a denial at all. It was just a delay. Everything was happening precisely on schedule. Okay, so that's the divine side of the story. But now let's flip the coin and look at the human response. How did Abraham himself react after finally getting what he was promised 25 years ago? Well, his very first act is an act of obedience, and it's all in the name. He was commanded to name the child Isaac, which comes from the Hebrew word for laughter. Now you're going to want to file that little detail away because it becomes the emotional core of this entire story. Abraham's response is shown to be just simple, direct obedience. He follows two specific commands without any hesitation. One, he names his son Isaac, exactly as he was told. And two, on the 8th day, he circumcises him, which was the sign of the covenant. And you gotta understand, these weren't just random rituals. In the ancient world, an act like circumcision was like signing a binding contract. It was a physical mark of a treaty. So by doing this, Abraham was basically saying out loud, I get it. This promise was fulfilled by you, not by me. I am completely dependent on your plan. But Abraham wasn't the only one who waited. Let's turn to his wife, Sarah. If Abraham's story is about patience, Sarah's is this incredible journey from deep, bitter doubt all the way to absolute delight. Her emotional story is really the heart of this moment. And this is where that name, Isaac, laughter, just comes roaring back with so much meaning. See, there were two laughs in this story. The first time Sarah heard this promise, she laughed, but it was a laugh of pure disbelief. That cynical, yeah, right, me, an old woman kind of laugh. But now she's holding her son, and she laughs again. And this time it is pure, unfiltered joy. A laughter she says will be contagious for everyone who hears her story. You can just hear the absolute amazement in her own words here. It's her basically admitting how skeptical she was. She's saying, can you even believe this? Who on earth would have ever predicted this? It's this beautiful moment of her acknowledging just how wrong her doubt had been. So the whole point of Sarah's journey is this incredible transformation. her very private, internal doubt gets turned completely inside out, and it becomes this public testimony of praise and joy that she wants the whole world to hear about. So why are we talking about a story that's thousands of years old? Well, it's because the themes it deals with, waiting, doubt, faithfulness, joy, those things are completely timeless. They're as relevant today as they were then. So if we boil this whole incredible narrative down, we're left with three big lessons. First, the challenge of trusting a promise when the wait feels impossibly long. Second, the idea that maybe, just maybe, divine timing is on a totally different calendar than ours. And finally, the powerful message that a long, hard season of doubt can actually be transformed into one of pure joy. And that brings us to one final thought to leave you with. This story isn't really just about the happy ending. It's about those 25 years of waiting in the dark. And it leaves us with a question for our own lives. When you're in the middle of a long, uncertain wait, what does faithfulness actually look like?